We are chatting this morning with Ali Safavi. He is Deputy Director at the NCRI, and we want to talk about the mullahs, mafia, capos revealed in Iran. They're basically the terror dons. So welcome to the show, Ali.
Well, good morning, and glad to be on your show.
I appreciate having you here. Now, did we not know who these bad bros were before today or before this came out, or is this information we're just finally letting everybody know about?
Well, naturally, as you may know, the Iranian regime has been designated by the United States as the world leading state sponsor of terror since, I think, 1984. But, of course, that's a general statement. And we know, like, for example, who the officials are, like the Ministry of Intelligence. But as to who actually are the people who devise and carry out these assassinations of both Iranian dissidents, but plots to assassinate foreign officials like you had in the United States and also in Europe, of course, people didn't have any information until, of course, in July, late July, the NCRI, on August 7th, the NCRI had a press conference in Washington at our office, and we basically blew the lid on the command structure of the Iranian regime's extraterritorial operations, which, based upon information that we were able to obtain from within Iran, from our network, they basically carry out their terror schemes in three ways. One, relying entirely on the regime's own network, using Iranian agents and operatives. Case in point was the major bomb plot against the huge rally of 100,000 people in France back in 2018, where lots of American dignitaries, people like, Rudy Giuliani, John Bolton, Tom Ridge, Bill Richardson, a whole host of both American and the European dignitaries, also some U.S. lawmakers were present. Fortunately, that bomb plot was foiled at the last minute, and a sitting Iranian diplomat, the senior diplomat in Vienna, who was in reality the intelligence ministry's station chief in Europe, was apprehended along with three accomplices, and had they been successful in that bomb plot, it would have been the biggest mass casualty terrorist operation in the history of Europe. So that's one aspect. The other means by which they carry out their terror plots is combinations of the regime's network as well as foreign mercenaries. You remember when they wanted to assassinate the Saudi ambassador Adel Jubeir in Washington, that famous restaurant, they had hired some folks in the organized crime in Mexico. And then you have a case where they rely entirely on foreign mercenaries and organized crime gangs. Case in point is very recently in November of 2023, when they hired elements of macro mafia in Europe, and they tried to assassinate a very distinguished European parliamentarian, actually vice president of the European Parliament for 15 years, Professor Alejo Vidal-Quadras, for his support for the Iranian opposition. He was shot at point-blank range in the jaw, but miraculously survived, and 8 people were apprehended. And of course, all of them were foreign national, Tunisian, French, from other nationalities, and the guy who was behind it is now is the head of the gang, is a guy named Sami Bakal, who fled to Iran. So you can see that in these ways, the mullahs carry out their terror operations outside Iran, basically to intimidate the dissidents, but also impact European officials from taking, or American officials for that matter, for taking tough stance against them. You know that they have put a bounty on Mike Pompeo, John Bolton, Hook, and even, there are 2 plots against the president. So that's how they operate.
And they're evil. They're just evil incarnate. It's what they do. They are so full of hate. They want the entire world to be run by Iran and to be exactly as they are. But you, as the Deputy Director of the National Council of Resistance of Iran, which is what NCRI stands for, I know you're in France, but you got to be looking over your shoulder all the time because these guys are deadly, and you've just pulled the curtain away from the Wizard of Oz here. So are you not a little worried?
Actually, it's interesting you mentioned this. Actually, I'm normally based in Washington. I originally came to the United States in the 70s, and myself and my colleague who actually held this conference, both of us were named in a federal complaint against two Iranian intelligence agents in the U.S., both of them in California, one of them a U.S. citizen because he was born in the U.S., and another guy who was a permanent resident. And these guys had a very elaborate scheme of intelligence gathering operation, and two of the people who were designated for a capture-kill operation were myself and my colleague, Ali Reza Jafarzadeh, who, by the way, blew the lid on the Iranian regime's nuclear weapons program actually exactly 23 years ago today, August 14.
Well, so, thank God you got out of there. Yeah, jeez.
So, of course, they were apprehended by the police, they were prosecuted, and they were sentenced to prison. But I'm sure you appreciate that, when you're involved in a struggle to bring freedom to your own people, it exacts a price, just as the American people paid a heavy price for their independence, just as the people of France did. Just as anywhere around the world where people have fought for freedom have paid the price. In fact, I should say that my own brother, who was 29 years old, American-educated aerospace engineer, was executed by the regime back in 1981. Of course, he had a life ahead of him, but of course, the monarch deprived him of that opportunity. So, yes, you're right. It's a risky business, but, if you're serious about wanting to change the situation in Iran and bring freedom to that country, you must be willing to take the risks that it entails.
Well, and it's like a ball rolling down a hill. Every once in a while, it hits a ledge and sits there, and the mullahs come back, and they cause a bunch of problems, and people get scared, and they take over. And, I mean, you guys have to keep fighting. It never ends for you.
Absolutely correct. Our movement has been fighting against the current regime for 46 years. And actually, the core group within the NCRI, the largest organized group, the NEK, actually has been fighting against not only the current regime, but the previous regime, the regime of the Shah. Come September 6th, they will be celebrating the 60th anniversary, and to mark that and to protest against execution in Iran, a huge rally by tens of thousands is scheduled in Brussels, which is basically the de facto capital of the European Union, where thousands from all over the world, especially from Europe, will be coming to talk about this, to talk about the need for change in Western policy vis-a-vis Iran. I think one thing that really could enhance our struggle would be for Europeans to let go of this policy of engagement, of trying to give concessions to the regime in the illusory hope that somehow this regime will moderate. But, a leopard never changes spot.
No, and Donald Trump knows that. That's why he's put the hammer down on Iran right now with their nuclear facilities and with everything that they have going on. And in the name of time, because I only have 3 minutes left, what are we going to do now that we know who they are? Should we hire our own mercenaries? I mean, what are we doing?
No, I think several practical steps that need to be taken, and I will mention them very briefly. One, quite frankly, we think that all embassies, diplomatic missions, and affiliated cultural and religious centers of this regime must be shut down. These diplomatic centers, they're not for diplomacy. They are for espionage, they are for assassination, and they are for intelligence gathering and also disinformation campaign. Second,
I might know a guy, just saying.
then there's the Ministry of Intelligence and the IRGC, which are the regime's main terrorist arms, should be designated as terrorist entities in Europe and in other democratic countries. Of course, the U.S. has already done this. That's step number 2. Step number 3, I think there should be a concerted effort when we talk about the U.S., the FBI and law enforcement agencies should identify agents and operatives of the Ministry of Intelligence and also unofficial lobbyists, apprehend them, prosecute them, and expel them. Because these lobbies facilitate terrorist activities. And finally, we think that the regime must be held accountable for over 4 decades of terrorism. It's good that everybody is focused on Iran's nuclear weapons program, but that's not the only problem. You have the terrorism problem, you have human rights abuses, as you may know, since the so-called moderate president took office in Iran last August. 1,570 have been hanged. That's 4 people a day. Imagine, 4 people a day. What would that mean if God forbid, something like that was happening in the United States? So we think the onus is on the international community, on the Security Council, and on other Western nations, who are the allies of the U.S., to take these dramatic steps to basically cut off the tentacles of the Iranian regime from European and Western soil.
Yep, got to chop off the head, too, with Ayatollah Khamenei, and you're not going to get anywhere unless you take them all out at once, because one will continue to recruit more, and I hope that you are recruiting for the NCRI to continue this fight into the future if it does not succeed in the recent future. Deputy Director, NCRI, Ali Safavi. Sir, thank you for being here today.
Thank you for the opportunity, and I'm sure, as you said, the end will come, and I think sooner than a lot of people will think.
I think it's coming pretty soon, especially with this president. He's just not having it anymore. He's tired of the terrorism. He's tired of your great people of Iran being 4 people hung a day. He's tired of it, and he's given them 0 options to get themselves together and to stop terror across the world, not just at home. But Ali, best of luck to you, sir. I'm sure I'll talk to you again.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Have a beautiful day.
You too. Bye-bye, sir.